Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. David Coles, Chief Engineer at the Department for Transport. Very warm welcome to all those who've dialed in for this RCA Lunch and Learn talk on using the Better Value Rail Toolkit. I'll leave Andrew and Herman, my colleagues, to tell you more about it, but just to say that they're both in my team in the Department for Transport. Andrew, Lead Technical Advisor, Herman, Technical Advisor. Andrew's been with the department 7 years now and worked on a whole variety of things, ranging from the technical specifications for High Speed 2 through to sorting out our train requirements, the specification requirements, and more recently on freight schemes, etc., and helping to solve the challenge that is Euston. Herman's had a fascinating and varied career working in Australia and India, and now supports Andrew in everything he does. Without further ado, I will hand you over to Andrew for the talk. Thanks.
Great, thank you, David. Just a bit of a fiddle here while I unmute myself and then go back onto projecting. Yeah, it's great to speak to everybody here. I'm happy to be talking about the Better Value Rail Toolkit. So the Toolkit is actually a joint enterprise between the Department for Transport, Network Rail and the ORR. Everybody here who's talking about it today is the Department for Transport, but the other organisations, we put the slides together collaboratively, so the other organisations will be speaking about the slides at different events, and this is very much between all three of us. So just to let everybody know, the Better Value Rail Toolkit is published on a public website, so bettervaluerail.uk. So if anybody wants to have a look at that as we're going along or later on, it's right there, you can look at it. And here's just a bit of a summary of what we're talking about today. So the history of Better Value Rail, why it exists, the toolkit as it is now, how we're taking things forward, aspirations for the future, and then there hopefully should be a decent amount of time for some Q&A. So I'm going to talk about the first two topics because I've been around a little while. I haven't been involved since the beginning, but I've been doing this for a couple of years. And then once we've been through how it is now, Herman's going to take over and talk about how we're taking things forward and our aspirations for the future. So the history. Better Value Rail was created in 2021 for the Restoring Your Railway programme. So if you don't need to remember the Restoring Your Railway programme, otherwise known as beaching reversals, there was a programme put together so that local authorities or campaign groups or anybody could bid for money to look at restoring railways that were closed as part of the beaching programme. And there were 3 rounds of what we call the Ideas Fund, where people could bid for this money to start putting together studies for these. So the first round of the Ideas Fund went out, a large number of bids were received. Many of them, the bids, the quality of the actual bids in terms of the paperwork were not particularly good quality. You know, there were some really good ideas, but they were sort of let down by how good the actual bid, the business case, the preparation was. And so people put their heads together to think about how to solve this. And one of the solutions was to put together this toolkit, which is basically helps you if you are thinking about putting together a new transport project, particularly a rail-based project, all the things you need to think through to make sure that your project is set up for success and that you're going to be heading in the right direction with it. So the next few slides were actually put together back in 2021 to introduce Better Value Rail to the world, and I thought it'd be useful to sort of go through those to sort of see the original logic behind it. So what is Better Value Rail? As I said, a joint initiative between DfT, Network Rail and Offices of Rail and Road. And it's supposed to be a practical set of tools. So it helps you work through the early stages of developing an infrastructure project, particularly a rail project. Though I should say, you know, part of Better Value Rail is helping people think through, is rail the right transport mode? So a lot of it is relevant to other modes, particularly sort of rail modes like tram, train, other light rail modes as well. And the whole idea is getting things right early helps you drive better value for money. It helps you do things quicker. And in the end, you know, from our point of view, it's likely to bring better value for taxpayers and better outcomes for the passenger and freight operators. Really useful graph there showing that if you're going to make changes, that it really saves money to do things early on. So if you want to, while you're still considering options in the early stage, that's the 0.1. Once you've got to sort of concept design, making changes is 1. Once you get to the output design, making changes is 10 times more. And then once you've actually started building it, if you want to make a change, that's 100 times more. So it's really important to get things right at the very beginning. And these were some of the issues that came out in that first round of Ideas Fund bids. So a lack of demonstration, alignment with the fund priorities and objectives. There were specific objectives that were put forward in that fund of this is what we're going to give money towards, and not enough of the bids were actually showing how those bids were delivering those objectives. Insufficient demand or evidence of demand for the transport. So you've got to be able to show somehow that if you're going to build a transport link, people do actually want to use it. And sort of linked to that, lack of or insufficient evidence of a clear existing transport problem. So why do you need this transport link? How is the existing transport network not delivering? Is there really a need? Now this next one, it's a bit of an economist one. It sounds really quite jargony. Underutilization of sensitivity testing within the economic appraisal to reflect and mitigate key scheme uncertainties. But this is really when you're at the early stage of developing a project, you are making quite a few assumptions. You're making quite a few estimates in terms of cost, benefits, demand. And what this is really saying is, if your estimates are a bit off, what would be the effect? A really robust case would say, okay, well, this is what we think demand's going to be. If it was 50% higher, 50% lower, what would the impact be? Oh, look, it still stacks up. And then the final one, and this is really key. This is a really big mistake that people make. Inadequate exploration, analysis, and/or explanation of why the proposed intervention is preferable to alternative options. So why is this the right answer? And it's a classic one, when people are thinking about new transport links, particularly reinstatements, is this railway line was closed in 1968. So clearly the right answer is to go back to exactly how it was in 1968 and just reopen it as if it was never closed. It should never been closed in the first place. Let's just put it back to how it was. But a lot has changed in that time. And so we really need to see evidence of actually having looked through different options of how you might deliver that transport link. Is it heavy rail? Is it light rail? Is it not even the rail at all? Is it some sort of bus solution, guided bus or ordinary bus or somewhere in the middle? Even if you're pretty sure that you know what the answer is, you need to have shown evidence that you've actually explored those alternative options, just so you can prove that the option you've got is the best value. So this is the better value rail approach. It really comes in 4 sections. The first one, clearing the way, is strategy. So this is about the objectives. Why do you need to do this? What is the problem you're trying to solve? The next one is entitled Be Challenging, is explore, is what is the right solution? Is transport the answer? If so, what sort of transport? The next one, entitled Be Prepared, is the examine section. And that's really going into the detail, checking the assumptions, starting to put together some costs and benefits, and actually getting some numbers together to say, is this going to work? And then finally, the culture, actually making sure that you as an organization have the right people and the right capabilities and mindsets to actually succeed as a project. So the people who are building Better Value Rail originally, put those 4 sections together and developed tools that fell into those 4 sections. And those tools are pretty much the same as they are today. We've been doing some work to sort of improve the site, but the actual tools are still there. And this is the sections that they fall into. So I'm going to take you for a brief tour through the site now. I think I've taken some screenshots of the sites. I was hoping to bring the site up itself, but I think probably going through the screenshots is probably the best way to do it now to sort of save on complexity. So here's the front page of the site. Sort of the top is on the left and the bottom is on the right. It's as most modern designs of website, it's designed to be long and thin, so you can access it on all manners of devices and you don't have to be sort of moving the screen around, you can just scroll down. And just to give you an idea of the importance that this toolkit was given in the respective organisations, there's an introductory video, and that has on it David Hughes, who at the time was our Director General of Infrastructure. He's now Chief Executive of Network Rail. It also has East West Rail, that's right, East West Rail. It also has Andrew Haynes, who is Chief Executive of Network Rail, and John Larkinson, Chief Executive of the ORR, introducing Better Value Rail, and really showing how the importance that all the organisations gave to it at the start and really still give to it. There's an introduction there, and particularly in the black box at the bottom, putting aside some myths. So people have come to Better Value Rail and thought, oh, is this a new fund? It's not a new fund, it's not a new source of money, but it does help you prove the value of your project, whatever sources of money there are available. And that changes from time to time, but the idea is that proving that your solution is the best value for money is valuable, whatever sources of money there are available, whatever criteria there are, that is always valuable. And then further down, you'll see we've got the 4 sections that we just talked about, the strategy, explore, examine, and culture. and then listing the individual resources, quick links to them underneath each one. And then right down the bottom, we've got the most popular tools, and this is based on data that we have. Visitors to the site, what do they most often use? And the most popular tools there, you can see the early stage specification process, the capital expenditure tool, and the complexity assessment tool. But we'll talk about those in a bit more. So just a whistle-stop tour of the different bits. So this is strategy. At the top of each page, there is a brief video which sort of explains what each part of it is around, and then you get links straight into the tools. So within strategy, we have the strategic context tool, which helps you think through why are we doing this. It's a checklist of reasons you might start a transport project for, and think about, well, yeah, why are we doing this? The strategic narrative is sort of linked, but it's more, what do you hope to gain? It's a checklist of all the potential benefits that a transport project could bring for you, and allows you to think through which ones you're aiming for. Because when you start a project, you might have specific benefits in mind, but it might be that there are other benefits which are available to you which you haven't thought of. So you can kill more birds with one stone. And remember, when you're trying to build a case, the more benefits you've got, the better, the more chance you have of getting it to go ahead. The vision tool is helping you think through a vision statement that gives everyone a common understanding of what you're trying to achieve as a project. And finally, the pause up receipt plan. So this appears in all the sections. And this is really to sort of think through, okay, we're starting off this project, not all projects succeed, and if this project is not going to be a goer, then we don't want to waste resource by carrying on with it for longer than is needed. So how do we assess whether this project is going to plan, is actually going to succeed, and if we conclude that it isn't, how can we sort of pause it or change direction or shut it down? Down at the bottom there's a couple more tools. The transport hierarchy is about the hierarchy that's given to different transport, to groups of transport modes. So it's encouraging people to consider active travel and public transport first before private transport. And then finally, the multimodal assessment tool links to different modes of public transport and allows you to assess the different pros and cons of all the different modes, including the main sort of modes like rail and bus and tram, but also some of the sort of less common modes like tram trains. So within the Explore section, the early stage specification tool, now this is specific to rail, and this particularly helps you understand if infrastructure is really needed. Sometimes people go too early for infrastructure, and this helps you think about, could you achieve some of the things by changing the timetable or by using different rolling stock. And down the bottom of this page, there's some more videos which go through those options in more detail. The early stage specification process is really quite a big section. It's one of the most popular tools. And this helps go through the whole process of how you might define what you're actually trying to do. So it talks about the requirements and the conditional outputs. It helps you decide on the train service, if it's a rail link, the train service you might actually want to run, how you might go through with Network Rail to sort of see whether that train service is possible, and how you might sort of define the infrastructure to allow that train service to happen, and then finally to define the infrastructure that you might need. And then the concept capture tool, it's a really big spreadsheet. It's got a lot of detail to it. It's a Network Rail document, and it sort of gives you a full list of the issues that you would go through for any infrastructure intervention, or that they would go through. So it gives you an idea of the range of requirements. The examine page, this is where you go into the detail of the project. So the assumptions, assessment, and significant tools. When you were thinking about the project, you will almost certainly have made assumptions, whether you did so consciously or not. And this tool helps you go through all of those assumptions and decide whether they are valid or not. And if they're not, what are the implications of that? So an example assumption is you don't need any more land. You think you can build a railway on all land that is sort of within the railway boundary, or for a reinstatement, you've got the old corridor and you think, yeah, I can rebuild the railway within that old corridor. Is that assumption valid, or are you going to need to take powers to sort of acquire more land, whether it be for construction compounds or drainage or power or signalling or something like that? Benefits and costs, and this is a group of 3 tools, and these are some of the most popular tools in the whole toolkit. These are the tools that really help you put together and quantify the benefits and costs, so you can see whether you've got a good business case. The benefits tool talks about all the benefits that you could get from a new transport link. It helps you to sort of find more benefits that you might not have thought of, and for the benefits that you do have, how you can actually quantify them, how you can actually attach pound signs to some of the benefits that you knew you had. For example, journey time, capacity. How do you actually get numbers out of those? The CapEx tool is helping you to quantify how much it's actually going to cost to build this transport link. And it's really clever. Within there it's a Power BI report that links to real data from Network Rail on how much it's actually cost to deliver various types of infrastructure. And then the OpEx tool, OpEx is something that sometimes gets forgotten. Once you've got a new transport link, even if you've got the infrastructure for free, if somebody's given you the new infrastructure, you've still got to operate whatever services you need. And are those services going to make a profit? Do they pay for themselves? If not, you might need some sort of subsidy. And do you actually have, do you have funding provision to subsidise those services? And that's something that's really important to think through early on. Is that something that's feasible for you? And then finally, the culture section. And it's a bit unfortunate that it's final, because what we've been thinking recently is that you need to think about these things all the way through. So we're thinking about doing a bit of reorganisation to sort of put culture in amongst everything. But these tools help you think about your organisation. So the capability assessment is, what are the skills that your project is going to need? What do you need people to know about to move the project forward? The complexity assessment helps you assess, this project, how complex is it relative to other projects? And that will help you decide the amount of support and the amount of contingencies you might require to deliver it. And the common assessment, it's quite a short tool, but it sort of summarizes the outputs of all the other tools. The idea is that you sort of keep this in mind and you keep going through this and reviewing as you go along things like the objectives and do you have the right resources, and make sure that those things stay in mind. So that is really a introduction to the tool as it is now. And I'm going to hand over to Hemant now, who's going to talk about how we're taking things forward in the short term and what our aspirations are for it in the long term. Just need to mute myself, otherwise the sound goes a bit weird in here, and then I'll put the slides back on properly.
So
here we are.
Thank you, Andrew. So about taking things forward. So after restoring your railways ran its course, and we3 actually got working on this. So our main priority is to make the toolkit more intuitive and beneficial for the users in the short term. So we are looking at trying to enhance the toolkit by making the content more accessible, improving toolkit navigation and reducing jargon, ensuring templates are functional and easy to use, which we found earlier was not the case. If we can move on to the next slide here, then the long-term goal is basically to evolve the toolkit into a comprehensive, future-proof resource that supports a wider range of rail and transport projects. Because like Andrew talked about earlier, it was heavily focused on heavy rail. And sometimes we do find that that's not the only solution. There are so many modes, transport modes available now, and that's what we have been working on presently. So the strategic areas of focus right now are deeper engagement, working closely with potential project sponsors to tailor the toolkit for their needs. Decarbonization and social value, strengthening the guidance on environmental and social benefits for each project. Business case and funding, providing clear directions on securing financial support. Safety by design, which is a very important point right now, and enhancing guidance on embedding safety principles from the outset. Rail reform and adaptations, ensuring the toolkit aligns with the ongoing rail industry changes, and then expanding guidance to cover innovative and sustainable transport solutions. And that's all from our end.
Great, thank you, Hemant. I think just to reiterate that we've got that website, the email address on there. So if anybody's got any thoughts, questions, you're welcome to email us. We also have a contact form on the front of the website. Now we have a bit of a problem with that, that it does generate an awful lot of spam. So there's always the risk that things get lost with that. So the best way to sort of ask questions about this is, or send your comments, is bettervaluerail@dft.gov.uk, and those are shared with the whole team. But we've got plenty of time now, so if anybody would like to bring any questions now or any comments now, we'd be happy to answer them.
Right. Thank you very much, David, Hemant, and Andrew. It's Jenly Chu here from Morgan Sindall. So my question for this is that you mentioned, Hemant, about the use of like non-heavy rail options. However, considering the fact that light rail hardly exists in the UK, except for example, like Manchester, then if you have a community was to have light rail, wouldn't the case be that it would be more expensive considering that you can't connect it to anywhere else in the network, and also the rolling stock isn't, and the expertise isn't there?
Shall I take that one?
Yes.
I mean, there are a lot more light rail networks around now. I mean, I think we got down to a nadir in the late 80s, where only Blackpool still had a tram system. Now we've got tram systems in Manchester, Sheffield, Nottingham, Croydon, the West Midlands. But particularly, what has emerged recently is tram trains. So you say that light rail can't connect to the national network, but we have various examples of where we have mixed operation of light rail and heavy rail. So, for example, between Newcastle and Sunderland, you have the Tyne-and-Wear Metro is operating on network rail infrastructure. Between Sheffield and Rotherham, you've got the tram train operating there. The whole Cardiff Valleys, that in half their network, they have tram trains operating, and as part of the Cardiff Crossrail, they have a plan to have those operating on street in central Cardiff. So that's what's really, it's a real interesting development, is this sort of, I wouldn't say merging, but this knocking down of the clear boundaries that existed between the network rail heavy infrastructure and light rail infrastructure, not compatible, must keep them apart with a big wall, and whether you can actually have more of a sort of merging between those, and so therefore what solution can you have? You've got more options for solutions to help deliver you better value for money.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That's a lot of things that I wasn't familiar with. So we have a question here. What happened to it?
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Andrew. I think there's also interesting moves afoot to look at reducing the cost of tram systems, because one of the problems in the UK, I think unique compared with Europe, is that the huge amount of work needed to move divert utilities and so on, because typically we have to dig up the road and go a long way down to support all those loads. But I don't know if you want to say a bit more about that, Andrew.
Yeah, that's an issue which is still under development. That is one of the goals of the very light rail scheme, particularly the one that's under development in Coventry, is to reduce the number of utility diversions by using a track form which can sit on top of them. It's been demonstrated in theory. It's not been given the go-ahead to actually roll out yet. So that's something we're very much keeping an eye on and monitoring. And if that does work, that is, as you say, a potential to deliver lower cost infrastructure.
Thanks, Andrew. And it's also worth saying that at the end of March, we've got a talk coming up on the Core Valleys, or the Cardiff Valleys lines refurbishment by Amy and Transport for Wales. And that is absolutely around a tram train system, a very innovative rolling stock, which is multimodal and can do street running and running on heavy rail infrastructure as well. Thanks.
There was a question I saw on the live Q&A, which was,
there was one other question in the chat. Matthew, was there a second ago? Perhaps disappeared.
Yes, David. I think the question was, okay. Are there any examples of successful railway projects developed using the BVR?
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed hearing that. Thanks everyone for joining us. Yeah, do, as Andrew says, go and explore the website. That's probably the best way to get into it. No, I know what it was actually. I just remember what Matthew's question was are there any examples of successful business cases on the website, Andrew?
Not yet. No. I think part of the problem is because it's a public website, people don't need to engage with us. So it's very much guidance that's out there. We don't have very much idea about how it's being used. We very much welcome people getting in contact with us, but no, not yet.
No. Okay, well, thanks for that, Andrew. And yeah, as I say, thank you very much for talk of interest. And as I was saying earlier, do go and look at the website and have a play. And hopefully this is going to take forward the whole industry. So thanks again. Yan Lee, anything more from you?
Nothing from me. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this Lunch and Learn session by the RCEA. We look forward to seeing you at future events.